Okay, today we're going to start working on restoring the fins and centreboard for the Mistral Take-Off. For those of you who looked at my earlier video, you might remember that these fins were actually glued into the board using JB weld or some other kind of very hard plastic, kind of a filler more than a glue, I guess. So this one here I've actually cleaned up a bit just using some sandpaper and that, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that. Because there was the glue or the weld or whatever it was stuck all over it. The centerboard, well, it's a whole different situation. It's got some filler on it here, and I'm going to open up these cracks a bit and see, you know, how firm it really is attached here. I can feel like a big ridge here, so I'm going to try and cut that back a bit. And the other side almost looks like fiberglass, but I'm not sure what's going on. So I'm kind of going to shape this a bit, see if there's any cracks, dig them out, and then we might put a layer of epoxy or something over it and see how we go reshaping it. It's going to probably take a few days to do this, so this is the beginning of it, which is really just the cleaning up. So I'm going to start with this centerboard here, and I'm going to open up these cracks. Some of the tools that I'm using, I've got a little mouse hand sander, got some gloves, I've got this little guy here, which is great for digging things out or sanding. I've got some sandpaper, regular sandpaper, and I've also got some wet and dry sandpaper. I bought a pack of this, starts from 400, goes up to 3,000. So typically with wet and dry sandpaper, you're using the paper and some water, rubbing it on. You start rough at 400, and then you get a fine, almost a polish at 300. And really remember, wet and dry sandpaper it's more for polishing and finishing rather than cutting. So let's get into it. So after a bit of sanding, you can actually start to see now the low and the high points. So there's some area in here and up the top here around the edges that I'm going to need to fill. And on the other side, you can see the areas that I cut out a little bit. I need to fill those. So I'm actually going to use epoxy, which is super strong, and it's probably going to cost me a little bit later on when it comes to trying to reshape this and sand it off, because it's also pretty tough when it comes to sanding. But because I don't really know what's under here and I don't really want to tear it all off, I'm just going to see what I can do about just filling this up, and then I'll reshape it. So we'll go mix up some epoxy. I'm using the Norglass filler epoxy again, which is 1 part hardener to 2 parts of the actual base or the filler. Let's get into it. Now, while the centerboard is curing or drying, the filler that I just put on the epoxy, I thought I might just spend a little bit of time cleaning up these fins. This is one I've already worked on. Of course, the Take-Off has got 2 of these fins. This fancy rotating system here that clips into the board, and these notches here that allow it to sit in a couple of different positions. And there's also a retaining strap that goes through here. So this one I've already cleaned up a bit, but you'll notice it's a bit scratchy, a bit rough. So I'm going to use some wet and dry sandpaper just to smooth that out a little bit. And this is one that came out of the board fresh. You can still see it's got all of this this glue, or as I said before, I think it's called JB Weld, but this putty stuff that the fin was actually glued into the board with. So I'm just going to clean these up now. I'm going to start with this one. I've just got some regular sandpaper, and I just want to try and get some of this thick, heavy stuff off. I'm going to start with this is about a 40 or a 60 grain grit. Oh, actually, no, it's 120. It tells me on the back here. I've also got one of these sanding blocks that I really like, where you can just attach these sanding pads on. So between the two, in fact, I might even start with this. So okay, so here's the 2 fins that have been cleaned up. Now, they're not perfect, obviously, and the board is 40 years old, so I think this is probably appropriate. What I'm going to do, that was 120 grain sandpaper. I'm now going to do some wet and dry. I'm going to start at 400, and then I'm going to work my way down, just see if I can smooth these out. In the end, I'll probably end up doing a little bit of clear coat or something on the top, but these are polycarbonate, so there shouldn't be too much required. Now, just as I'm looking at it, I am noticing on the back of this fin some damage, some scratch or a crack or something. It's not something I'm going to try and fix at this point. It's not like loose or anything, so I think it'll be all right. So with the wet and dry, you grab it. So you can buy these sets of wet and dry. This one starts at 400 grain, which is the roughest. This was 120 sandpaper and the wet and dry, and goes to 3,000 in this particular kit, which when you feel it, it feels just like paper. It's really like for polishing. So I just grab my little bucket of water here. We'll start with this one. I'm just going to dunk it in the water. It's going to get a little bit messy. I'm going to grab my 400 grain. And I'm just going to sand So after spending probably about 35 minutes using sandpaper, the finished fin looks like this. And this is the one that hasn't been done yet. It's just been rough sanded. This is the one that's had the fine sanding, or the wet and dry sanding. So you can see how it's sort of cloudy looking on the surface here. This will come nice and clean when I put some lacquer on it, just some spray clear coat, just for looks. Don't care about this part at the top because that part's in the board. I'll just make this look a little bit pretty. If I just wet it, you'll see how the color matches the rest of the board. So that's what it'll be like when it's got the lacquer on it. So that's about all I'm going to do. Yes, I could continue to sand it and I could get every little scratch out, but again, this is a 40-year-old board. This is perfectly functional and it actually is going to look really nice. So, you know, we'll do the right amount of restoration. So I'm just going to work on this one now, and that'll have the fins done. And the next part of this will be sanding down the centerboard, and probably putting some more filler in, continuing to work on that. And eventually I'll repaint the centerboard and I'll do the fins at the same time for the finished product. It's been a few days since I did the patching on this centerboard for the Take-Off. As you can remember, it was pretty rough. I was using an epoxy filler. I think it was the Knorr brand. Look earlier in the video for it. Today I'm just going to try and see if I can reshape this. I'm just going to use my trusty Black & Decker mouse sander. Let's see how we go. Okay, what I'm going to do with this centerboard now is just fill a couple of the tiny little sort of like bubble holes from the previous fillings, you know, where a spot was missed. I'm just going to use that filler again, the epoxy filler, just little spots here and there, you know, and then there'll be one final sand and we will be done. Okay, so today is hopefully the last day of sanding this centerboard down. I was just trying to fill in a few of the little bubbles and things that were from my last lot of filling. A few spots here I want to sand back, reshape this a touch, and then we should be good to go. This is the finished product. So quite a mixture of fillers. Sanded it down. Look, it's not perfect. I can see some tiny little air bubbles, you know. But given the board's not perfect and the sailor's not perfect, this will be just good. And I'll post a picture of what it looked like beforehand. There'll be a little bit more to this video where I actually do I'm just going to spray it with some white paint, nothing fancy. And the fins, I'm also going to give just a little bit of a clear coat just in the areas where I've scratched them up, where I was cleaning them up. And that will be the end of our centerboard and fin restoration. Hope this was useful. Okay, we're just going to finish off the fins in terms of the finish on them, at least today. I'm using the Norglass brand. It's an Australian brand, Weatherfast Polygloss. It's a clear, and the only reason I'm doing it is just to actually make them look a little bit nicer, where I had to sort of sand them back. You know, they kind of got a little bit scratched up. So I'm just going to give them a light spray. It's not really to protect them as such. It really is just for aesthetic. I'm not sure if I'm going to spray the whole thing or whether I'm just going to spray the areas at the top where I was actually doing some sanding. So I'm thinking probably one light coat. Let's give it a go. This is really just to restore that kind of wet look. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see, but already it's made quite a difference. I'm not too worried about the bit up the top here, this part, because this sits in the board and it's going to get pretty scratched up. Here's the other one. Finished product. We'll see how it goes. I feel just looking at it, there's a little bit of that sort of orange peel effect. So we'll see what it actually looks like when it's fully cured, and I'll decide whether I'm going to paint the rest. But already you can see it's looking a lot better than with all of the dry scratches that were there before. So when it comes to restorations, I think one of my least favorite things to do is to paint, because I don't really have a spray unit or anything. So the one thing I'm going to paint on the Take-Off is the centerboard, which I had to repair, as you saw from previous videos. So I'm going to use a Norglass paint. Let me grab it. So I'm just using a satin paint. This is a marine paint. It's a premium enamel and it's a satin, just in a white. And I'm just going to use a little mini roller and I'm just going to roll it on. It's just to seal up the centerboard. I don't know, you know, if I hit a sandbar or whatever, how long it'll last. I think it'll be fine. I had been thinking about doing it with a 2-pot epoxy and all that sort of thing. But honestly, for this, it's just as easy for me to whip another coat on if I need to. So clearly this is going to require more than one coat. I'm thinking maybe another 2 coats. I'm looking at a couple little spots here. I don't know if I need to fill it or not. I suspect the paint might be enough. I was thinking about painting the whole thing, but I'm really just going to worry about the blade because I know this part's just going to get scratched up anyway that goes in the board. So today I'm just putting the finishing touches on these fins. You'll recall last time I sprayed the top part here and then I was thinking about whether I should spray the whole thing. I've decided upon closer inspection that I actually will spray the whole thing, so that's all I'm going to do. Using the Weatherfast Norglass paint again, let's give it a run. You can see the finished product. Pretty much dries the same as what you can see here. I'm just going to do the other one. And we'll call that good. All right, we're going to finish off this centerboard today. I think it'll be the final coat. It actually came up really good just with one coat, but I can see a little bit of, you know, the work that was done underneath with the fiberglass, etc. So I'm going to try and give it a second coat. Going to be using the Norglass Weatherfast Premium Enamel Satin White again. And I've got my little roller here. And that should really be it for this centerboard.